We're trying to do a number of things here. I'm trying to get rid of this phone. First of all, people find out that I'm here at the studio and they want to call before I even get started. Want me to tone it down, I guess. We're very glad to be back again for another program on what's going on and also on allpointstv.com, the number one studio here in the area where we are. And we are beginning to expand and continuing to expand. And hope you will stay tuned for the next hour. I'm going to be talking about something that I think we're not really getting in terms of the shutdown, what is really going on here, and how that plays into a whole lot of things that have happened previously. And I'm going to try to make some connections here in terms of connecting the dots, because I think what we tend to do, is that we don't tend to see how maybe what's going on in certain areas plays into what has happened in the past and how this is a continuing in some way of what is happening right now from what has already occurred. And I want to try to see if I can kind of connect some things up and make some sense out of, for example, the shutdown. And I think that this title that we did of this program, we're going to title this one after the representative in Massachusetts who represents the 5th congressional district in that state. And Katherine Clark, I'm talking about here, and her comment, which I think was more of a, I don't know if you say it was a fraudulent slip, but it certainly was not intended to edify anything or clarify the position that is really in back of the shutdown. And this really is a Schumer and Jeffries. These are the minority leaders in the House and in the Senate. Jeffries in the House and Schumer in the Senate. People saying, well, Schumer is just taking a more leftist approach because he's fearful of being primaried by AOC in the upcoming election, and he's fearful that she's going to primary him and then get him out of there, and he won't be running again. For how many terms he's been up there, he really should be stepping down rather than waiting to fall over in his chair like Dianne Feinstein did. And these persons don't want to leave because they get drunk with power. And really, they don't have any place to go where they're going to be able to wield the power and influence anywhere, because they're not really, the people that run this country are not really capable of running anything. They're certainly not doing a good job of running the country. So anyway, there's a method to the madness, and I think that Katherine Clark let the cat out of the bag. It was an inadvertent way of doing it. She didn't intend to inform, but she was saying here that it is the only way that the Democratic Party could get leverage, because the shutdown was the only lever they had to pull. And what she was really getting at in a moment of clarity, which wasn't intended is that, but you can read between the lines and understand what she was saying and what the party is in fact doing. She was only mouthing what we could in fact see going on. Don't forget that the president is not that he's so much a Republican, but he is certainly the president in the Republican Party. He ran he ran in the Republican Party, whether he's a Republican or not. I think it's more of an independent of that party than anything else, because he's doing things that behind the scenes they have to go along with him, because he's the one that's actually directing and controlling the impulses in that party right now. And you can't come out and then be against it, because the people in America, how many votes would they get if they were running for president of the United States? This man got 70 million votes in the last election. He won the election in a landslide, no matter what they're saying. And this man has been elected really 3 times as president of the United States. They just would not stop voting for him. And finally, when they got to the 2024 election, they had to give it to him reluctantly, as they were trying to he and how find another way out. But this election 2024 was too big to rig. and they had to do what they did in 2024, similar to what they had to do in 2016, but for a different reason. 2016, in 2016, they did not have any contingency plans in place to overturn what, by the time of the end of the day, in November the 8th of that of 2016, that elections held November the 8th. At the end of the day, they didn't have any contingency plans in place to do anything other than to certify the election results, which they were shocked that those were the election results. They had predicted that this was going to be a landslide and Hillary Clinton was going to do a cleanup and just mop the floor with this guy. And that did not happen. And Donald Trump came out, and they were surprised when they came out with 306 electoral votes. And they weren't ready for that. But if they'd been ready for it, if they had really not been drunk drinking their own Kool-Aid, as they say, and had paid attention to what was really going on, and this is underneath the radar of what they were talking about. They were talking about the man was going to get chewed up in a windmill, and this is going to be a slaughter that he might get at the most 100 electoral votes, and they had predicted this is going to be an onslaught because he's going up against a seasoned politician, Hillary Clinton, and she had been in Washington 30 years with her husband, and then she had her own, she ran in New York, the senator in New York, and then she was Secretary of State. So she had a lot of background in the political arena in Washington. This guy comes in from nowhere. This man had never been elected to an office anywhere. And they was looking at him as a gadfly and looking at him as a laughing stock. And they could not believe, what is he doing? Where have we seen anything like this? Where's the marquee where we can go back and look at this anywhere and see where we've had this kind of politician running and successfully winning? We didn't have any resume that you had to have seemingly at that point, had in the political arena in the past, such as military service and that or part is very important, or military service. George Washington didn't have any political background. He had military service, and the father of the country, but didn't have any political background as such. He had not held in any political office. This man was a military leader, and that was what drove him into just because really a lot of it was because it was like a reneging of the other players, because who else would have been the first president of the United States if it was not George Washington? Can you name anybody at the Constitutional Convention in 1787 that would have been able to play that role? George Washington was singularly qualified to be the first president of the United States. And everybody knew that and saw it, and they saw it when they were in that room in 1787. That Washington, that was going to be the first president of the United States, and everybody knew it as they were meeting there. And when we arrived there as a non-delegated member there, they made him the president of that convention because of the status of this man. And when I was reading the Federalist papers, which I read them, by the way, not with the comprehension and skills that I had later on when I read them over again. You have to read them. You pretty much have to become familiarized with it on these other levels above you when you get your training. You really can't. I don't really see how you come out of grad school in this area and you're not familiar with the Federalist Papers. I don't think they're familiar with it too much today. I don't know if they're still requiring what they did when I was going to school, when I was in grad school. I don't know how much of it's changed, but it seems like a lot of it's changed because I hear them talking now as these more recent graduates, and I just don't think that they're getting that grounding point as they once were giving. Seemingly like they're not coming out with the kind of studiousness, their background. It might be a degree in the same area, but the background is so different. It seems to me it's very different than it was back in the day. But anyway, the point I want to make today in this conversation is that there was a cat let out of the bag when Catherine Clark said that shutting the government down is the only leverage that the Democrat Party had, and people can scratch their head asking, what does she mean by that in terms of the only leverage? Well, the president of the United States is in the Republican Party. The House representative certainly is about a slim number, but they are majority in the House. I don't want to call it the House of Representatives because none of them up there representing anybody other than themselves. And one of the problems that we have in the House of Representatives is that these persons have a particular segment of the state that they have been elected from, and they're wielding a tremendous amount of power disproportionate to the area that they represent, because they don't represent the state; they represent a district in the state. But the power they wield is beyond that, because they, as a consortium, they speak in these different individual segments of the states, and they carry a lot of weight because they can stop things from going on. And then in the Senate, there's another game they're running, and that is that in the Senate, they have these senators. They act like they are inept to do anything about the fact that we need all these votes in order to stop, for example, the shutdown, and we can't open it back up because we need more than a majority vote to bring that about. And you don't see the okie doke that's being played here, because nothing in the Constitution requires that. That's a rule they set up in the Senate. They can change that rule by majority party deciding by majority vote. Keep on talking about our democracy. By majority vote, they can decide by majority to change the terms in which the government can, if the shutdown has to have more votes to say yes than say no, then maybe 51 would say yes to open it back up, and 49 would say something else, but the 51 would carry it. But that's what you have. That's not what you have there. But that's a rule that's made in the Senate. It's not in the Constitution of the United States. That's a game they're running on the American people, because both parties, they have had a chance when they were in the majority to change that rule, and the Republican Party is now in control. They can change that rule right now as well, but they don't change it. You know why? Because they're leveraging that policy against the American people. It's not. This is a uniparty that is actually fighting over the leveraging of the state, and the leveraging the state is leveraging against the American people. Both parties are arrayed against the American people, and they don't have. I call it the House. I hate to say the House of Representatives. I don't think you have a House of Representatives in this country. I don't think that either party or either branch of the Congress is representing the people. They're representing themselves, and that's why no matter how bad the country is doing right now, none of them are going to be doing badly, because even though they've shut down some of the pay of other persons in the society have been paid through the federal lodges, none of them are losing a pay. None of them are losing any sleep over it. They're not losing. They're not losing any pay. They're being paid along the way in terms of the shutdown. It does not affect them. It affects the country. And that's why these shutdowns are occurring, because they don't feel any the weight of the decisions that they're in fact making, but the people out here are feeling it. And it's going to really get hot when the people at the bottom that already have nothing to lose and are willing to take it to another level, take it to the streets. If their financial interest is in fact hurt, and they're playing a different game at that level, than they're playing these where there's more people, the people that have more a stake in the buy-in in the system. But those that are outside and their sad position is by the handouts that are given to, and those handouts are given to keep people quiet and keep them under control and things like that. Once that is in fact suspended because of this nonsense that they got going on and the shutdown, and they shut down these shutdowns are going way, are going rate in how they are dealing with Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is an outsider, and this man is coming in with a lot of independence, and they have to do that. Neither party is really comfortable with him being there. The Republican Party is not any more comfortable with him being there than the Democratic Party, but he is in the Republican Party, so they are not going to be quite as anxious about getting him out of there because they are a beneficiary to him being there as their party member. But they would, if they had their choice in a more private space and were able to speak to it privately, you get a different verdict than what you're getting by them falling in line behind him. But it's not just Murkowski and Clark, in uh, 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 in Alaska and Maine. They're certainly out there as outliers in the Republican Party. They're pretty much Democrats. If on the outside, they may speak inside of a party, but they're really not they're not really they're more outsiders than the others are. But all of them none of them are really concretized behind Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is an outsider, but he came into their wheelhouse, and he came in without the badges that they have, because they had to come up through the ranks, and there are IOUs as you go up through the ladder, and Donald Trump did not do that, and that's why he's such a danger. He did not go through the same processes that they went through to arrive at the top of the food chain. But that's the going rate, and that's where we are right now. But Catherine Clark did something last week that we need to pay a lot of attention to, because sometimes you have these persons that do not intend to do some things or say some things, to let you see behind the mask that they're all wearing, because they're all up there in Washington. All of them are masked. These people are masked. The politicians have to. All politicians are masked. If you know how these persons really felt and what they really felt about you, me, and everybody in the country, and how they felt about the country itself, they would be unelectable. I'm not going to elect these people with the mask that these persons have. Most of them are nothing but raving lunatics. These people are maniacs. And if they really came out and showed the American people who they really are, who would vote for them? And I mean, take this Zoran over Mam Manny, Mam Danny over there, Mam Dana, then I think his name is, over there in New York. This guy, they were just, he was speaking. I saw a tape of him, a video of him speaking the other day. I guess it must have been, it had been either, it had to be his weekend, because what I saw today was on TV on Fox. Maybe it was today earlier today sometime. I know it's very recent, the last day or 2 days, and everything this man was saying, they were just cheering. It was just, they just thought this man was really saying things that are going to happen if he's elected. You're going to have this, you're going to have that, and nothing's going to cost you anything, and it's going to be fine. And they're up there cheering like, what is this, free? I mean, nobody has to pay for it. And if he's talking about all these things going to be free, then somebody got to pay for it. And the ones got to pay for it, the ones that have the money, and the ones that got the money not going to stay there while you picking their pockets and then staying around for you to do that. They're going elsewhere. And look for a lot of them to exit out of New York. They're not going to stay around for him to pick their pockets like that and have them having to foot a bill where the government is using them as that person that Amity Slays talked about in a book called The Forgotten Man, where they're the forgotten man, where A and B are deciding what they're gonna do about getting C to pay for what they're talking about. That's the idea that in that first chapter of Amity Slay's book, she talks about a lecture that was given by this professor, um, Sumner. I think his name is not the representative, but the instructor. Was it Cornell or was it Yale? I can't think what school it was. But in the 1880s, he was teaching that A and B would make a decision because they're concerned about something that is happening to C. They want to help C, and A and B get together and because they want to help C out, and they get together, decide that something needs to be done, and they're gonna rope, let's say, X into it without his permission, and get him to pay for it without him having anything to say about it, and that's going to be acceptable to the person that wasn't even invited into the discussion about it, and that's a forgotten man, but he's not even forgotten. What it is not even considered. It's just assumed they're going to be able to rope him into having to comply with it because they can make that determination if they are part of the state, can dictate to him he's going to do that. Yeah, you can do that if there are not 49 other states you can run to. But in the federalist system set up by the framers, fortunately, you have some other choices and options here. And that's what's going to happen when you see this guy that's up here promising all these things. They're up there cheering like they don't have any sense and cannot do any independent thinking on their own. And they think they're going to stay around and just wait for him to just pick their pocket like that. And they're going to stay there to pay for it. All things he's imagining will be free, as if anything is free and doesn't have to be paid for at some point. We got 30-some trillion dollars of debt because of that faulty idea that something is free. You know, it doesn't seem it's free if you can pass it on to the next generation and create generational debt and postpone it so it doesn't be paid right now. And you may think it's free, but ask your children about it. I have a lot of discussion with people about this, and I'm always talking about how we may well think that. I was talking to a guy just the other day. One of my good friends was telling me about how he was able to do a lot of good things because of the unions in the city of Flint. And the unions did this to the UAW, and they did that. And I say, yes, you talking about how great it was, but let me ask your son about it. What does your son think about that? Because the son didn't have a job in the shop because that plays out in terms of how that would have been when you were there. But that's a golden goose, and what happened to that goose? What is it now? Go and ask your son how he feels about that, because that door is now closed. And for those that go in there, not going in there under the range you're talking about, because those ranges will change, and because the robotization of it as an answer to what they were doing, which seemed to have been a benefit to them. But look at what it became as they began to price themselves up to a point where you can pay for the machinery to take the place of those person making those demands, and machines don't make demands. You just oil them and fire them up and let them do the work, and you take the people doing the protesting out of there, and you at some point can cut the cost because the cost escalates in the labor force, but at some point it becomes palatable to replace the cost of labor force. And that's what you're saying right now. But nothing, everything has a cost. And I'm watching this. So I'm watching what's happening in New York. They're getting ready to elect this guy. They keep on trying to say, well, we can get this person to drop out. Let's say get Curtis Legal to drop out, then that may be better, or would be better if Cuomo drops out because he's carrying all this baggage. People have not forgotten what he did when he was in that governor's position. So would he drop out, and would that increase Curtis Sliwell's position? The point is that it doesn't really matter which one of them drops out. This guy is going to be the next mayor of New York. There's nothing they can do about it. This train has left the station, and it's going to land at a place they're not going to be very happy about once the election is over. But I don't see anybody can stop him. And this cheering that you see I'm doing right now, because everybody can get up there and make a claim. But you got to keep in mind that A and B are making a decision, and they want X or they want C to endure the proposition they have created in their own mind will be an answer to it. But the forgotten man has not even been invited into a discussion about it, and he doesn't have to tolerate it because he can move elsewhere where the discussion is not going on, and that's what you're going to see out in New York. But I think that Katherine Clark did something. It was something of a benefit to the voters. And whenever I see anybody doing something in the political arena that's a benefit to the voters, I always take that as a fraudulent slip, some kind of a fraudulent slip, because they're not there to do that. Politicians not politicians not there to do anything on behalf of the electorate. And those persons that think that they are there to represent them, and they want to take what they promised to the aftermath of what happens after they've been elected, and that's in the forefront of their service, quote unquote, with the word service in quotation marks. Once they arrive there after they win the election, let's see. I feel like this guy over there in Hungary. How many times have you seen that in the history of the United States and politicians in this country? And that answers what that guy in Hungary does when he says, when they talk about immigration in that country, he holds up and said the number that we have coming in here is, he holds up that big zero, that alt, because there's no evidence of that. Nobody can point to anything that these politicians have promised and kept their promises after they were elected. These are things they say over and over again, and you keep going back and forth as if you haven't heard all of it before. And the people keep falling for it. It's as if you can just change parties, and both parties are doing it. I mean, they're not. This, it was intended to be the House of Representatives, but that's an intention that's gone awry. That is not the way it plays out in the political arena. It's a very good layout. The structure put in by the framers is immaculate in terms of the concept. And nobody had done this type of setup. They had the philosophy, but how do you bring that about? We put them into place the organ that could actually bring that about if, in fact, the players were on board with it. I mean, to have a lower house and it's going before the people every 2 years, and have an upper house and it goes every 6 years, and have one that is closest to the people, and the other one is the one representing the states, and have the states go to Washington as the state's representatives, and then as the one closest to the people go there as the people's representatives. So you have two different bodies there, one representing the people because it's closest to the people through the House, and then the Senate is the representative of the state going there as the officials put there by the state legislatures. It's a wonderful idea on paper. Theoretically, it's a great idea intended to work if you have honest players with integrity. But you can't put the word integrity, let's be honest here, and let's be honest to say this. You can't put the word integrity in the same paragraph with the word politicians. It just does not fit. There's no congruency with the idea that these people are dignified enough to go to Washington and do what they claim to do when they are running for office, and they go there and do what they claim they're going to do once they get there. I mean, what, what, when have we seen that go on in the country? Has that ever happened? When? Under what? Under what president? In fact, we're bragging about Trump because at least the man made some promises. And we're not talking about somebody that is an angel here now. We're not talking about somebody that came down from somewhere and dropped into our midst. This man has human baggage like the rest of us, but he has made some promises out of his. I think we can use it. There's some things about him that we have to understand his motivations and things like that. The man is narcissistic, and that can be made some use of to the advantage of the voters because he does want to be remembered as a consequential president, and he does want to do some things in order to bring that about. That's what that. The idea of him building this ballroom that will be something that will you could now meet on the in extension of the White House, rather than meeting out there under the tents, which is what they have to do right now because they don't have any place for a large gathering for them to meet inside the White House because it's not really built for that. He's trying to build that ballroom so that it will in fact accommodate that, and that's a good thing to do. But he's doing it because that will be some way of remembering him. He'll have nobody will ever be able to erase him from history. That's what this is about. But that's a benefit to the country. He's not trying to be king. He's trying to be remembered. He's trying to leave a legacy that cannot be removed once he's no longer there. And that's an ego thing. And then that plays into the wheelhouse of the members of the body that wants to have representatives, represent the government. So that's a little bit of along that line and so on and so forth. But the government is doing what this woman was talking about, which let this cat out of the bag. Katherine Clark was saying that it's the only leverage that they have to shut the government down. Now, I was surprised that she said it. I was surprised that that's what they're doing. That's what they've done all along. Katherine Clark was saying that they're leveraging the shutting down the government in order to do some things they could not do if the government was in fact open. They want to put some pressure inside of the process. Why? Because Donald Trump is the Republican Party president. Take that in any way you want to in terms of what the meaning of that is. Then the House of Representatives has a majority of Republicans in it, even as one or two or three members in that party. They control through their numbers. They made a minority party out of the Democrats in the House of Representatives by whatever numbers they are, and that's also true in the Senate. That is to say that Jeffries then would be the minority leader in the House of Representatives. He's a member of the Democratic Party. He's a minority leader in the House. And Schumer The senator from New York is the minority leader in the Senate because the majority party in the Senate is the same as the majority party in the House. So they control the presidency, the House of Representatives, and they control the Senate. The government is in the hands of the government of the Republican Party that's in charge in a majority in each of those three areas of the government. And really, they got 6 members on the Supreme Court, pretty much, on a bright and clear day. That should be carrying the weight, somewhat, not consistently, but somewhat. The court is more conservative than it's been, certainly more conservative than it was under these under Earl Warren, for example, which was a very liberal court, and that's why it made the rulings that it made. Some of these rulings, you go back and look at some of the things that are being said right now. That we go back over some of the things. Some things this guy now, this one guy is a, a filmmaker. I think his name is Chad Watkins. You should watch some of the things he's doing. He's doing some great things here with some of the documentaries he's putting out there, because he's going back over, for example, the civil rights movement and putting into context what that really was about. And people need to pay attention to this guy. This guy is making some noise. He's doing some things differently and putting a whole different landscape on the history that many people thought that they already had put to bed. These things are being opened back up, and now he's going into a whole different area and opening it up a little bit from a different standpoint than what they were doing. And we're getting a different understanding of it now, a different understanding of King, too. And that is shaking up a lot of people, because people thought that they were already being told all of the things that were taking place under that movement, and now finding out it was more of a peripheral view than it was a view centralized to what really was going on. There were a lot of things that were going on in our peripheral vision that we failed to take into consideration and put in the center of our focus, or what we're looking at during that time period. And that guy has been opening up a lot of cans of worms in the things he's doing. He's shaking up a lot of people. But you can go. You could have read that in. I wrote about. I wrote. I think I wrote about this in one in one part of my. I think I did a 1-part series on this in terms of this idea that we have here, that our strength is in our diversity, and I was challenging that notion somewhat based upon what I had read. But I see myself being grounded in my view and what Chad Watkins is doing in his visual claims made in his films he's making right now. That man put out one called Uncle Tom, and what he did with that was to show some things that would be very different than what persons think about when they think about Uncle Tom. And he's doing some things now that are raising a lot of different eyebrows, because this man is looking at it through a different lens. But it's not something that's really new, in the sense that you can go read about it in Harold Cruz's books. The Crisis of the Negro Intellectuals is what he wrote in 66, 67, somewhere around there. And that book is unparalleled even today. And then the book he wrote 3 books of some mammoth importance. His book called Plural but Equal. Get that title. Not separate but equal, but plural but equal. And I was writing on that yesterday, going into an area that nobody else has gone into in this country, as I was challenging this notion that diversity is our strength, and our history does not allow that claim to be made, but make that claim because we don't understand what this diversity is about. It's really homogeneity that has made this country strong. And because it's in different groups in terms of the group's cohesion with each other and so on and so forth, that has made the country operate. Because they came here with they were happy to be here because of the opportunities that this country gave to them as newly arriving immigrants. But they understood their strength in this place of their choosing would benefit them in their cohesion as a group from a different polity of where they come from. But they came here and set up their homogeneous groupings in the United States, but under the American umbrella. That's a great part of that of their arrival, different than it is right now, because people are coming in this country right now to change the country, and we've not caught on to the difference between what they did and what was happening in Ellis Island, and then how that played into creating e pluribus unum. E pluribus unum is not understood in terms of what that stands for, because we think that it stands for a melting pot. It stands for a salad bowl, but the salad bowl is not one which everything is mixed up. So all the ingredients, in fact, you can see in the salad bowl, there's tomatoes in there, and there's see, there's different things in that salad bowl, and you can act like it's all merged into one. Do you see the cucumber mixing and binding in with? See, it's still a certain amount of estrangement in the mixing. There's a certain amount of distinction that remains in there, even though there's a certain mixtures going on. It's still not, the tomatoes don't become cucumbers and things like that, and the cucumbers don't become the lettuce and that. So we get this idea there's melting into something, and groups stop being the particulars of what they represented an image of when they came here. Because I go up there and see it right now, and in a place that's not very far from where I am in Flint, and that's up there in Frankenmuth. And I go there a lot of times just kind of just to embrace the environment. But I know where I am when I go up there. Bavarian Inn, and across the street there's Zendas. And I go over here and I get that chicken, go over there and get the same chicken. And really the same meal in two different places is they mimic each other because they come from the same cultural background. And I was talking about that, by the way, in a post that I wrote about this guy named James Fowles. I said I'm not going to tell you why I'm concentrating on James Fowles, because that would take me into a whole different area. But I was talking about James Fowles because James Fowles' background talks about him being in this Irish community. His name, he was born James Sutton. He changed his name to Fowles later on, but he was named James Sutton. Comes out of an Irish community. But he talks about how he would go into, as a child, he'd go around there in the other community, one that was around the corner down the street, and that was the Italian community. He'd go around there and get beat up, but he liked the friends, the ones over there, that he still liked them and all of that, and kept going back. And they finally, after they said they saw he was not going to get discouraged, they began to accept him, and he became one of them, and just before you know it, he's in their home sometimes, and he's learning about um, meatballs and spaghetti and all these dishes the Italians were making. And he says later on, and that was great. And they would come over to my place and they'd have these beans and just different things. They were sharing things across cultural lines, but they had distinct. He was talking about distinctions that were being made in those communities, and I was talking about it in my own background where I saw it in Birmingham on the Surrogated South. I was right about that. I know what they're saying about this diversity is not true because I came through it and saw it with my own eyes and lived it and came through it, and I know what I was watching, and I have a better handle on it now than I was when I was going through it. And I wrote about it in my post yesterday, and nobody's going to write anything differently about it and change that. Nobody's written about that because we don't understand what we're talking about. I've been in 25 countries, and I'll tell you this: in every one where they have bought into this idea that diversity is their strength, each one of them is coming unglued at the seams. In Europe, Western Europe is already gone, already destroyed, buying into this nonsense by people like the former uh, president of Germany and this present president of France, Macron. These people are lunatics. And if you want to read about it to see what this is about, go and read Jonah Goldberg's book called America Alone and see what he's talking about in that book. Because Europe is already gone because of this nonsense. And Farage in England is begging the United States not to go down the road to make the mistakes that it made because he sees what is happening there because England is now an extension of the Middle East. He's seeing what this leads to. It's not it's the diversity is diversity of homogeneity. And that's the claim that I made, and nobody's going to write against it and say otherwise because because I saw this play out, and I know that's what I was looking at. I now have a studied view of it, but I did not really get that when I was coming through it. But I can go back and look at it now and see what was really going on there.
Did you ever hear what St. Augustine said when he said, the Roman Empire was collapsing? He was part of the Roman Empire. St. Augustine was, the last stages of it,
Mm-hmm.
event of Christianity kind of really put a serious dent in the Roman Empire. But he goes, they're being invaded by barbarians. He goes, I don't care if we're being invaded by barbarians as long as they're Christian. And so basically, it was the worldview they held.
Right.
Yeah.
John, that is what we're talking about here. If we can understand that, we would not be making the mistakes we're making right now. We're making some tremendous mistakes.
Because everybody from Europe, my ancestors from all over Europe, Scotland, Ireland, England, Sweden, Germany, Hungary, we came here to become U.S. citizens. We didn't speak German outside or Hungarian outside or any of those other languages outside the home. We spoke English amongst our neighbors who are here in this neighborhood where the studio is, a multi-ethnic group, but they're all like they served in the World War I, World War II. Germans serving against Germany, going to people from German ancestry, going to put people in gun sites who might have been their cousins. That's where our loyalty was to be a United States citizen because Europe didn't treat us too well.
Yeah, and John, the area that you're talking about, you remember you talked to me about St. John Street, which I came in to enter that, but you saw it when you were coming up, and it was these different groups on St. John Street, and they were all in different cultural zones, but they were not there at war with each other. They were there as a part of a mosaic. But there were the Italians there. They didn't become Irish. And you had the Chinese there. You have when I go to Detroit, I go in downtown, and before I know it, I'm into a place that they call Greek Town. I go in there and like to go into the restaurants there and experience that. And I go into this place that have the maybe the Chinese go into that restaurant and you see the Chinese chandeliers and the strings and that like these tassels and that that they have, and so you really have entered into when you go into a Chinese restaurant, you have gone into a miniature version of China. They're not trying to fight against the country. They're not separatists. They're Americans, but they are the carriers of a culture particular and peculiar to that particular group. That's homogeneity that you're talking about here.
Okay, I saw this Korean guy. He's I can't. I'll send him to him next time I see him on Instagram. I think he is. He's Korean, but he's raised in England. Absolutely is enamored with the English culture, British culture.
Mhm.
He said, "I don't." He said he doesn't like Islamic culture because they want to transform every culture they come on. They want to destroy it. And he said, and that's true. I'm sorry. There's a lot of them Muslims out there are nice people, but when they get their numbers up, they get bolder, just like everybody else. Okay, just like everybody else.
Right.
But I mean, he said he trashes the Muslims coming in or to saying looking down on some British, culture. You don't have a culture. Really, then what was sustainable? Why you made it attractive to come to our countries for? That's
Yeah.
you come here for. All that's our culture.
That's right, John. You're making the point here, and we had better pay attention to that point you're making because we will, in fact, overlook that or forget that it's been our past. Other than what we're trying to import is our past. We have made up that stuff. Where our past is a past where we've had different groups coming in here and becoming part of the mosaic as a part of their distinct and individual groups. It is uh, it's the contemporaneousness of their presence and the difference in their presence they brought here in that mosaic that made this country operate. But it operated as people operate. People, what is happening in America, quite frankly, if you look at it very carefully, even now you can see it. I was saying in my post that that the Mormons, for example, have carved out two states for themselves. They carved out Utah and they carved out Idaho, and they don't intend to give either one of them back. Go look at the numbers, but they're not out here talking about burning the flag. They're American.
Matter of fact, during the Reagan administration, the CIA, the FBI, and other federal agencies drew heavily for recruiting from the Mormon population because the mission field requires them to go to other countries. They were coming back with very, very, fluent in different languages. Very smart people. I mean, basically like a swath of people who came like from the 1950s, preserved their button down, wear ties and shirts. They don't even drink coffee because they think it's too stomach. I mean, I don't like their theology, but I mean, you can't fault the people. I mean,
right. I mean, they you could say that they have a distinctiveness about them, but the Quakers look at that history of that group. Those guys, they were embracing the American ideals more than others were. When we were talking about these ideals, these were practitioners of it. Look at the people that were in that what they call the Underground Railroad, and just try to pick out who were those person that was actually doing that. I don't agree with how they have framed the Underground Railroad. That's a lot of that is mythical. I'm trying to think of the book about it. You can read about that, but there's a book out. You can go and read about it. That's a mythical thing about the Underground Railroad. But the person that were actually spearheading that movement, and if you can call it that, and were in fact setting the tone for some of the things that were happening that allowed the enslaved population to make some bold steps toward their freedom. Look at the Quakers' role in that. But they were not. But they were embracing the ideals that was set up in 1776 in the Declaration of Independence. That part about the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's stated in our document. All men are created equal. That's stated in our document. And this mosaic kind of ideas in our documents, they had embraced that. And the difference is not. See, we think that it's diversity that has brought this result that we have in this country. It's not really that. And I want persons to read what I wrote and tell me where I'm in error here. So I'm the only one writing this. I'm the only one saying this. But show me the error of it. I was debating one of my students. He had written on my wall, "This can't be the Mr. Mouse I had in class." Blah blah blah. And I told him, you must not have been listening in class. He wrote back and said, "But I owe you a lot," and so on. And I understand what he's talking about. But what he would have learned under me more than anything else is be your own thinker and don't. He was set up. He was bothered by my embracing of Trump, and what he would have learned from me more than anything else is be your own thinker. And this idea that Donald Trump is trying to be a king, forget that nonsense. This man not trying to be a king. This man is trying to be a person that made a promise and he was elected upon those promises and he's trying to carry that out now that he's in power. And we've not seen that before. And he's doing it, something that neither party has ever done. Don't have people that have been doing that. And he's just as strange to the party he's running in as he is the party that is really trying to get him out of there. And saying that this man is a king. This man is not a king. This man is a person that comes in there that's trying to leave a legacy that is different from what they've done in laying down these tracks. And he's not following the footsteps of those persons that went before him, but laying out some different tracks, and they're not willing to accommodate themselves to it. They're trying to throw him out of there. Both parties would like him out of power. And I thought I had taught to be your own thinker. But he came back when I told him that you must have been paying part of attention. He came back and said to me, "Well, I do owe you a lot, blah blah blah," and so on. I don't understand what he's talking about, but let's understand that this idea that you're talking out of different sides of your mouth, I don't do that. And I asked him, "What statement did you hear me say that would contradict what I'm saying right now, although I'm at a different level now than I was then. I'm much smarter than I was then because I've kind of, anybody that's not any smarter when they were getting their degrees as they are some years after that, because a lot of the learning doesn't take place in the classroom. It takes place because of the learning in the classroom, and then the foundation that you have as a building block to go into a higher level of thought. But the thought process is improved through your training, and information that you're getting is constant in terms of getting more and more pile on in your development. I'm smarter now. I know that for a fact. I'm smarter now than I was then. But I wasn't too bad at it when I was in that class either. He's talking about it. I knew the class he's talking about. I remember him in that classroom. But I asked him to show me what the contradictions, and that's going to be a different conversation. He's not going to He's not going to be able to do any of that. But he was telling me I have a lot to thank you for, and so all of that. I'm not trying to get any glory out of it, but I want them to know that you're following this idea, and then this idea they think I'm trying to say either be a Democrat or being a Republican. They think that's my message, and boy, did they not get me. Because my thought is that neither party is worth a quarter. And really, neither party has represented the American people since the tumultuous election of 1800. That's the fourth election this country's had. That's the fourth election in this country's history. George Washington elected twice, 2 times unanimously by the electoral vote. John Adams coming after Washington, he won the election in one term, but then they came up from the grassroots to challenge him in his re-election bid, and those that were part of the revolutionary aura around Adams. Yeah, he was one of the primary revolutionary players, but he was not the only one that became president out of the revolutionary struggle either. And that's why he was getting some uppings from Jefferson, all those. I remember him out there as a revolutionary. And this man broke the covenant of that revolution when he went and signed into law the Alien and Sedition Act of 1796. And when he did that, that was just a bridge that's too far away from what they were trying to do when they were out of power, trying to bring that into reality, what they were doing, and then they have them do that. They saw that as this man going against what they had, in fact, fought for when they're out there in the sticks against the British, and that was a bridge too far for them, and they stood against them in 1800. And I was saying in my writing, that's when everything has an unintended consequence. But that's when the the election of the president was taken out of the hands of the American people at that point. It began to seep out of the hands of the American people and to go into some other things where they no longer had an absolute control over it as they did at the beginning. As they started out with the right person to do it, but it didn't remain that. And you now have what this lady is talking about, what this representative talking about in Massachusetts. She's actually making a point. Inadvertently, she inadvertently made this fraudulent slip in saying that they're leveraging this shutdown. She's right. This shutdown is being leveraged for power. They can't do anything else. What are they going to do? Go along with these majority voices in which they don't have any way of leveraging their voice into the process? Are they willing to do that? Well, it's Trump, it's majority in the House of Representatives, the majority in the Senate, and all of them are Republican Party members, and their voices where? In a minority setting in all three realms. And they're not willing to do that. And people think that this shutdown is something that's different. They've been shutting the government down there since Trump got in there. People didn't see that we're shutting the country down in 2020. What do you think that the COVID was about? What do you think that was about? You think it was about the COVID virus? Do you honestly believe, I'm just asking this question, do you honestly believe that COVID is about a virus breaking out, was a jailbreak, a breaking out of a lab in Wuhan, China, 6,000 miles away from here, and that virus broke out? Let's say the lab was in the United States, not just in, let's say it's not in China, it's the United States. Would that virus be able to, in fact, affect the air all over the United States, less known all over the air of the planet? I was on the airplane. This woman was getting on my case because I was not wearing a mask. Every time she left the area where I was, I took the mask off. And she knew I was fighting her. And she was trying to bring me out into saying that where she can get my seat now and then block me from ever getting on the plane again. She wanted to know why, in fact, I'm not wearing that mask. And she telling me some things, and then she would say, okay, all right. She wanted me to say no. And then, but I wouldn't say anything. She was trying to get me to come behind my mask. But I was fighting her all the way and fighting on that plane. I'm not putting no mask on and breathing the air. And you convinced me that air, we're up there 32,000 feet in the air, and that virus up there affecting the quality of the air, but it's in China, down there, and then over here, and 6,000 miles from when the plane took off from, and that it's affecting the air there. And I believe that. I didn't believe that, and I went to Africa, and then and they were telling me out there in the park, I'm saying they had to put a mask on out here in Africa, in the park in Africa. Why? And they were having some problems with me over there. Up here, just look up. You think that was about the air, the quality of the air? I figured out, my math may be off, but I figured out probably there are 4.5 quadrillion to 5.5 quadrillion tons of air in Earth's atmosphere. That's my calculation. Now you can calculate it for yourself. I've calculated it. I'm satisfied my numbers in the ballpark. 4.5 to 5.5 quadrillion tons of air in our atmosphere. If you think that this shutdown was about that much air being contaminated by a virus escaping out of a lab in Wuhan, China, you got to be out of your mind, and you're the same lunatic that they are, but you're a lesser player in it. But they are the agendas of that because they proclaim this nonsense for the whole world to fall into. What they were doing, because they understood Trump could not be defeated based upon what he had done in 2016. They knew they could not be defeated. Not given all the things he had done in that 4-year period of time. The economy was churning, and James Corfield will tell you it's the economy, stupid. And this economy was churning. They had to shut that down. They had to shut the country down because if that economy was churning the way it was churning, there was no way they could come in and defeat this man. They knew that they had to shut the economy down, and to do that, they had to shut the country down. That's what that was about. Anyway, I think you have to look at what was said here by the representative because she made the claim inadvertently that it's about this shutdown is about leverage. They don't have any leverage. They don't control the presidency. They don't have the majority in the House, don't have in the Senate. And this leveraging is this shutdown as a way of being able to get something that they can leverage and bargain with because they don't have any power in the corridors of power in the United States. That's why I wanted to come to the studio today and talk about that, because I want you to understand what is really going on in the shutdown here. And the shutdown will stop when the American people let these office holders know that they're not going to tolerate the country being damaged by them leveraging the value and weight of the country against this quest of power by these two parties, because neither one of them, both of them, made them of nothing but scumbags. Knuckleheads. That's what I call them in my post, and that's what they are. Neither one of the parties. But understand that that we got to put pressure on both parties to get them to do what they ought to do, because the country should not be paying any weight, any baggage for what they're doing right now. And she gave an opening for us to understand that, and I want to take that opening and let you understand it. And then we have to start doing something about it. We have to get this government open to do what it needs to do to stand up for the people of this country for the first time in the aftermath of this shutdown. And that's going to happen once the weight becomes such they cannot continue to control it. Okay, I got to get out of here. As always, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.